Hi again, Andy back. We're going to carry on with a deep dive into sketching and making parts in Solidworks. So here we go. Back to this sketch that I was working on in the last video, and I'm just going to carry on working on this sketch for now. So you can see I did the radii, I did these holes, but what I'm really thinking is this part that I'm making, I want it to be a plate that I can bolt to the ground or bolt to something. And I fixed this circle and this one, which will be holes when I do an extrusion. I fixed them relative to each other as I showed you in the previous video. So I've made this. And you can grab any of the dimensions and move them around so that they're easier to read. I've made those dimensions relative to each other, so now I can't move the circles around. And you know, I could just keep doing these. I could draw some more circles, but that seems like that would be tedious. For instance, what if I'm actually going to make this plate 250 millimeters. Whoops, 250 millimeters. So it's going to be much bigger. And I actually want to have better, kind of a bolting array. Well, there's some things you can do in sketching that makes that much easier. So for instance, if I just take my mouse, hold it down, and you can see the drag box here, and showing in blue shows the things I've selected, I can do what's called a linear sketch pattern. So I select that. Now it's showing me by default those two things I selected, and it's going to make more of them. I can pick the distance I want between them. I think I want to make these 40 millimeters between them. And I don't just want two of them, I want a whole bunch of them. Whoops, maybe I'll make them 35. Yeah. There's other ways I can specify how many of those to be, but that's a really simple way to make a pattern. Now the pattern itself is horizontal, and you can see, like I showed before, those things are in blue. And if I click on them, basically they're in blue, meaning that they're not fully defined. If I click on one of them, you can see that shows up as a circle, and it's patterned and it's underdefined. So if I click that pattern, it shows me in blue everything that's there. I can then say, maybe that wasn't exactly what I wanted. I'm going to right click on that, and it shows as edit pattern. Now I'm back to the pattern editing thing that I was looking at before, and I'm wondering, why is that not fixed? I can look, it's on the x-axis. Maybe I want to make it relative to that axis. I'd kind of like to dimension that horizontal spacing, and I'd like to fix the x-axis direction. I don't have anything going on the y-axis, and let's see what that does. And there, because it basically hadn't, when I made it before, I just ignored the fact that I was using in the x-axis something. Now it's showing me these dimensions because it decided it would copy that line. Maybe I want to edit that pattern again. You see, when I look down at the entities to pattern, I I patterned the arc, I patterned the other arc, and I patterned that line. I don't really want to make a pattern of that line, so I'll get rid of that. Should get rid of that. Should get rid of that. There it did. And so now my pattern looks more like I wanted. I don't have any of those crazy lines showing up that were in the pattern just now, and I don't have these in blue. Everything is locked in place, and I very easily made a replicated pattern thing. If I save the sketch, then it looks good. It's showing me that there's a dimension there. Now you'll notice that when I highlight the sketch, all of the dimensions that I used in my sketch show up, and because I'm using Rapid Sketch enabled, allowing the 2D sketch plane to change dynamically, I can make changes to these things. Maybe I want to make that 150. If I do that now, it didn't change the pattern because I had those number of patterns. And so I could potentially go and edit those parts. I have to open up the sketch to edit those. But some of these major dimensions you can edit from not even jumping into the sketch. So I've got this sketch now, and I've done some straightforward things with it. It's made a fairly complicated sketch, and I can go further than that. I can go back and edit the sketch and say, well, you know, I actually wanted a couple of cutouts like that. You can see that I'm in the sketch editing view, and I've drawn this rectangle, but what I really wanted was a cutout. Well, there's these trim tools here. These are really essential, and you'll use them all the time. If I select this trim entity, and it gives me a bunch of ways to trim things. Power trim is a good place to start. And if what I do is move my mouse somewhere close to the things that I want to trim or get rid of or cut, and I hold my index finger, my left button down on my mouse, and I drag it across the things that I want to trim, they cut away. Now if I drag them back across, they're still fine. And if I go like there. So now I've made this cutout by drawing a rectangle and then getting rid of the parts that I didn't want. What if I want to have a tab like so? But wait a minute, that tab isn't connected to anything. Well, just like trim, there's also extend. And I can click anything here and I can extend it. So all I did was I pressed the extend button and it extends to the next nearest feature, the next nearest sketch feature. And that isn't exactly what I wanted. I want to trim that, and now I have this funky looking tab. I could then, if I like the look of that, I could dimension it. So as long as the topology is what I had in mind, the details of the dimensions and how big things are, you can sort out later on. There we go. And so now I have that new little funky clip there. Now that it's a sketch, the last thing I'm going to do before we're done this little video is extrude it into an actual plate. And it knows that if my sketch was like so, it's going to extrude everything. I really only want this to be 4 millimeters thick. And as you saw in a previous video, I don't want all of those things. I want to get rid of, I want that contour and only that. And you can see when I selected that contour, just because I'd made this sketch more complicated, I don't want to pick that circle. Also, what you saw from the one of the previous videos is I made it mid-plane, so now the sketch is the middle of the part just because of the last thing I'm going to do. So I've got this rather complicated looking thing. Now, just like we did before, I want to use that circle, but I don't want it to go around like happened with this. I want to rotate it around that. Now it's picked a whole bunch of weirdo things. The only thing I want to select is that. So it was trying to guess my intent, but it didn't guess very well. There. So now we have this plate with a welded ring on the end of it. It looks a little different than we started with because it was kind of a wonky thing. Now this is getting to be something that looks like maybe there's a purpose for it. Maybe this is a serious part. So thanks for watching. Talk to you again soon.